Hello and welcome to BHA Live, our ongoing series of educational opportunities being hosted by Barbershop Harmony Australia's Harmony Academy. It's the first session. Welcome. Sit back, relax, enjoy tonight's presentation. And of course, a big welcome back to those who have already had the chance to experience one of our Friday night sessions. Before I get started, I'll give you a little bit of housekeeping here. We'll get that out of the way. If you've joined us via Zoom, please feel free to use the chat function to chat amongst yourselves. However, if you have a specific question about anything being presented, please make sure you submit that via the Q&A function. This will make sure that the questions all funnel through and get seen properly. Our session this week is all about the history of BHA, hosted by my very good friend, Mr. Richard Reeve. Richard's got a background in musical theatre, a lifelong love of harmony singing. And look, Richard discovered Barbershop in 2003, thanks to Sydney Harmony. Since then, he has sung with numerous choruses, including Vocal Evolution, for a decade, leading them as president to their inaugural National Gold Medal in Hobart in 2009. Richard has won national gold medals with his Quartet Alliance and TLA, and he's represented Australia at BHS International numerous times in both quartet and in chorus. He was the MD of the Brisbane River City Clippers for 2 years. He served on the BHA National Council from 2011 to 2015. He's been a BHA Performance Category Judge since 2009 and is a member of the BHA Education Faculty. He's a really good friend of mine. He's a really good friend of yours. Here he is, the one and only Mr. Richard Reeve from Australia.
G'day everyone, my name is Richard Reeve from Australia. It's my great pleasure to be here. Thanks to my good friend Dan Milgate for their handover. Apparently we're good friends, and the evidence of that is some of the photos that I won't be sharing with you tonight of some of our travels around Australia and internationally. I'm assuming, I can't see how many people have logged in, but I'm assuming it's just flooded because there's nothing more interesting and exciting than the history of anything really. And the history of BHA is what we're covering tonight. I'm just going to straight get into my little presentation. So I'm going to share my screen. Apparently that's what we do. Okay. And yep, sound, share, and start this, which is up there is where we started. Excellent. Speaking of a well-oiled machine. Hey, look at this. History of BHA, Barbershop Harmony Australia. So welcome and on with the show. I'll give you a little outline now, which is here. Give me a little message if I've got another couple of boxes on my right, Milgate and Beckett. Just so as long as everyone can just see the actual presentation, that's what's important. So, so much information tonight. I'm just going to get cracking straight into it. So what I'm going to cover is a super brief history of barbershop as a genre and of BHS, because that's really important context. Our discovering barbershop in Australia didn't come out of nowhere. But the main bulk of our presentation will be some key moments, people and stories from BHA. And in 30 or 40 minutes, clearly I cannot cover everything. So I've just chosen a frisson, a sample of some of those key exciting moments from our 35-year history. And at the end, there'll be a fun quiz. So please download Kahoot. I think my attractive assistant, Beckett, will send around a link about how to do that. But basically, you Google Kahoot and you download it onto your phone, I think. So that'll be to end out the session. And then, so questions like has been done with the sessions previously, shoot them through and Milgate and Beckett will monitor that. Happy to answer questions along the way. And there may be, hopefully, a couple of minutes at the end for those as well. So on with the show. I'd like to acknowledge David Wright, BHS legend, Hall of Fame member. The first number of slides I'm going to talk about are based on his information. He, for 30 years, has been running a course on the history of barbershop at Harmony University in America. And he's got something like 10 one-hour sessions on the history of barbershop. So I'm going to give you is like an executive summary of the executive summary. So thank you to David for that material. If you want to see, I do recommend those online, but also each Harmony Academy in Australia I do a full session, 1 to 2 hours on those, covering those back. So on to the show. So yes, going right back to the beginning, sort of the beginning of singing 1,000 years ago. This is some of the sort of singing that that was common at the time. Key thing to note here is unison, and the first and all my music judge friends, musically educated, the most basic interval there is the octave. Got to keep going now. Excellent. So we'll share that again. And go. And go. Yeah, excellent. So again, this is an absolute skate through some of the basic stuff. Of course, through the centuries, classical music came along, and the point of this slide is that by the time barbershop became popular, all of the musical complexities, nuances, fun, relationships, they've basically been explored. So just have a listen to some of the musicality you hear here. Tension and release. Okay, so we've got to keep going. Naturally, there was a massive religious influence on singing over the centuries. And this is an SATB arrangement, so soprano, alto, tenor, bass. And of course, the melody in an SATB is in the top level. So as you listen to this, imagine if the melody is brought down an octave, does that make it barbershop? Question here. Reminds me of Bugs Bunny cartoon. Okay, fair enough. So, got to keep moving along. So the answer to that question, does it make it barbershop? It in the ballpark. Okay, and we could run another entire session. Obviously, a music judge would run it but this is getting quite close now because you've got our voice, the lead voice in the middle there. So another influence as barbershop evolved. Next, and next, and next. Oh, excellent. So the word barbershop, is there a history in England's barber shops of music? And the answer is yes. In Elizabethan England, the barber was a place, basically anything that you had to do with the human body, bloodletting, dentistry, any of that would be done in the barber shop. And there was a history of music. Was it what we would now call barbershop? Probably not. But the point is, there was a history of music in the barbershop in England, which came over to America in the 1800s with the millions of immigrants from Europe, and made its way into barber shops in America. And that's your good old look at the moustaches. And that's why everyone wears moustaches now. It was the fashion of the day, along with the onion on the belt. So here we are in the mid-1800s in America, and the quartet is starting to get really popular. This, you'll notice, is a mixed quartet. Even back then, there were mixed quartets. So yeah, really by the middle of the 1800s, really quite popular in North America. And for many decades, there was a suggestion that it was a white art form. All of our cliches of The Simpsons and Jimmy Fallon, it's white men in boater hats with barber pole paraphernalia. But there's strong evidence that African Americans had a huge influence in the 1800s on harmony singing. They would sing in the fields. There's various other evidence about that. So that's just a very quick one. Minstrel shows, huge influence. They were white men mimicking and sometimes mocking black men, and they would normally have a barbershop quartet in them. So that's a key part of barbershop history as well. Vaudeville was huge entertainment before Broadway and before movies and that sort of thing. Vaudeville was massive in the late 1800s, and they would have all sorts of dog and pony show, sister act, and they would often have a barbershop quartet. Now we're getting into the real peak of the barbershop quartet. Thomas Edison invented the phonograph in 1877, and recording took off, and barbershop was one of the key things that was recorded. So we're now in the peak of the barbershop quartet, and we'll have a little bit of a listen now to just a couple of examples there. Notice when we turn from the massive horn to the microphone, you'll hear a difference in the recording.
I can forget.
Recognize this song?
From you I never can say you'll be mine.
Just adjusted my sound. Hopefully that's a good sound for you now. I've got to keep cracking along.
I want the good God and long to be wonderful and the only girl that Daddy ever had. A girl goes back into his heart so true. One who
Stop that.
girl goes back into his heart so true. Into his heart so
This is fantastic.
one who loves nobody else but you. I want a girl just like the
Let's keep going. That's fantastic. That's exactly what you want. All right, wonderful. Louis Armstrong had a quartet and sang in New Orleans, and he thought the trumpet was singing. So it was very typical when he was a young man for the barbershop quartet. Got to race on to get to the BHA stuff. Mills Brothers, I just could not go on without hearing some of this. It just melts your ears.
Calling Caroline, it's my heart a calling down. Lordy, how I miss you, gal of mine.
How beautiful is that? Okay, so peak of the barbershop quartet, and instead of singing the old songs, they're singing the current songs. Even back in the day, they would be singing songs from decades, generations ago, the Civil War and before. So barbershop has always sung both popular songs of the day and of previous years. We've got to keep racing on. I'll just skip through here. So the 30s, the barbershop quartet had died down. This is the sort of music that you'd be hearing. But people are missing it. Okay, so two founders of the Barbershop Harmony Society, Rupert Hall on the bottom and O.C. Cash on the top. They were travelling salesmen. They met in the Mule Bach Hotel and said, let's get together. I don't have time to read this, but let's get together. Everyone, open invitation. We miss singing on the 11th of April, and that is now Barbershop Quartet Day, because that was the first meeting of the re-emergence of barbershop. On the right there is the International Gold Medal with O.C. Cash on there. It's a tribute. And what are those all stand for? The SPEB, etc. The Society for the Preservation and Encouragement of Barbershop. 2 words. Interesting. Quartet singing in America. Huge name because of the New Deal at the time. And first convention in 1939. Interesting stuff there. Bartlesville Barflies were the champs. Got to just absolutely massively race through all this. 1941. Bing Crosby was on the board of directors, although there's no suggestion he turned up. Bob Hope as well, but he just sort of said good luck. 1941 competition of the society. Edna Mae Anderson founded Sweet Adelines in 1945. The women wanted to sing too, so they formed an organisation. Judging very quickly. Back in the day, one of the judges was heard to say by a competitor, I don't know who to give who to win, who to give the most points to. They all sound fine to me. And so that's not what you want to hear as a competitor. So the tradition of judging emerged from that. And about a decade later, the BHS put its first judging system into place. So we've got a that's it for the history of barbershop outside Australia. We got to just, the Buffalo Bills were massive, Blue Guy Student Union, the Suntones, the Vocal Majority. So that's all for another session. They were just massive influences on barbershop. All right, so here we are, 1985 in Australia. Alan Border is just taken over from Kim Hughes as captain of the Australian cricket team. Australia! Bob Hawke's Prime Minister. Midnight Oil has just released arguably their most popular and famous album, Red Sails in the Sunset. And who wouldn't like a new Ford Falcon? Look at this, much more car for not much more than your ordinary Ford. Who wouldn't want one of them? Okay, now I want to acknowledge Andy Aberley, life member, who much of the rest of this is based on, as well as some other sources. But he has, he's written a book on the first 20 years of BHA or AMS. So thank you to Andy. So on. I need to figure out how to move that. Oh, well, too bad. So on the 14th of April in 1985, the first barbershop concert in Western Australia was held. And at the Subiaco Performing Arts Centre, and it was a grand success. And just a couple of months later, on the 14th of June, the Western Australian Association of Managed Barbershop Singers was officially formed, and constitution was adopted and the first officials were elected, including, as we'll talk about, John Little as the first president. But these things don't happen in a vacuum. So let's rewind a second and go, okay, well, what was the context of barbershop singing in Australia in order for it to spring to life in 1985? The Four Notes were an existing quartet. We'll hear about a bit in just a moment. Link Abbott and Derek Cosburn were part of a quartet at Dreamworld on the Gold Coast in Queensland. Two of those members, number of those members went on to be our inaugural champs, the Sentimentals, in 1991. And really, a lot of people, numerous people around Australia already knew, but they just hadn't connected. They needed more of this. Okay. All right. So I'm sure this is going to work. This is a video from Dreamworld.
Plenty of action from Dreamworld, the barbershop quartet with the harmonious, hair-raising activities.
Hello. 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 Good old days, those good old days. Bring them back to me. Now. That's a pretty certain sign that wedding bells are breaking up that old gang of mine. Heart of my heart, how I love that melody. Love that melody. Too bad we had to part. I know a tear would glisten if once more I could listen to the gang that sang Sweet Adeline, Sweet Adeline, my Adeline, my Adeline. You're the flower of my heart, Sweet Adeline, Sweet Adeline. You're the flower of my heart, Sweet Adeline, Sweet Adeline, my Adeline, Sweet Adeline. Down by the old mill stream where I first met you, with your eyes so blue, dressed in gingham, too. And it was there I knew that you loved me true, You were 16, my village queen, fine well, just like the girl that married dear old Dad. She was a pearl and the only girl that Daddy ever had. Good old-fashioned girl with heart so true, one who loved nobody else but you. I want a girl just like the girl that married dear old Dad. Now I have found a sweetie known as Susie. Susie, in the words of Shakespeare, she's a wow and how. Though all of you may know her too well, I'd like to shout right now, if you knew Susie like I know Susie. Oh, what a girl, there's none so classy as this fair lassie. Oh, holy Moses, what a chassis out in public. She's meek and mild, but on the sofa, fireman, save my child if you knew Susie like I know Susie. Oh, what a girl, Mammy, Mammy. I'd walk a million miles for one of your smiles. And those were the good old songs.
Anyway, so that's a bit of fun. You can find that on YouTube. So there was quite a long tradition, just like Dreamworld was had a lot of similarities with the big theme parks in America, of course, Disneyland and Disney World. So Derek and Link had been working for many years in Dreamworld in their quartet. Okay, so the four notes. So there were. So you got John Little on the right there, and Bruce Oakley, who's second from the left. They were had been vocalists for 25 years in around Perth, and singing together, mostly accompanied. And then in 1984, they just happened across the barbershop singing, and of course, like we all did, went, "Oh my gosh, this is amazing! How do we get more of this?" And so they went to the Spebsqua International in 1984, and this is a little news article on them, about them going across.
It's the sweetest harmony ever heard in these hallowed halls, coming from a barbershop quartet which has been together, plus or minus the odd bass or baritone, for 26 years. The reason for the lunchtime Parliament House practice? Well, the four notes have been invited to the World Series of Quartet Singing in St. Louis, Missouri in July as guest performers. With every minute's practice vital, it's lead tenor and secretary of the upper house, Bruce Oakley's turn to provide a venue. The other three are baritone and quantity surveyor David McGill, bass baritone and senior bank officer John Little, and tenor and statistician Laurie Russell. Put them all together and...
My Mabel waits for me underneath the bright blue sky, where the dog sits on the talkabout.
Laurie, John, David and Bruce make up the four notes, the barbershop quartet that hopes to strike a high note for their hometown at an international expo in St. Louis. Simon Reeve caught up with the four warblers just before they took to the skies.
You'll come a waltzing Matilda with me. Waltzing Matilda, waltzing Matilda, you'll come a waltzing Matilda with me. And he sang as he watched and weathered on his billy horn. You'll come a waltzing Matilda. A waltzing with me.
A band of gallant gentlemen and their ladies from the land of the Billabong, who've travelled 10,000 miles on an odyssey they're unlikely ever to repeat. Like dozens of fellow enthusiasts, they've come to England for the biggest ever event in the barbershop calendar.
Keep your sunny side on. Keep your sunny side
For a moment it seemed the whole of Gatwick Airport had been stopped in its tracks.
Stand upon your feet, give the world a treat.
Not a word of hello, not a shake of the hand. The first thing you do is to share the glorious sound of harmony filling the air.
And it's been really worth the 24 hours of travel that it's taken us to get here. It's just fantastic. I can't describe the feeling. It's just marvellous.
Oh, we knew they were going to be a great bunch of fellas because they sing like we do, but we didn't expect anything like this. Very good, great.
Now, for those unfamiliar with the world of barbershoppers, the general gist is that you never say anything if it's possible to sing it instead. And from the moment they set foot in England, these guys proved this indeed to be the case. They stopped singing only to draw breath.
I want a girl just like the girl that married dear old Dad. She was a pearl and the only girl that Daddy ever had.
The Down Under Chorus started their singing sojourn with a short tour of their idea of the #1 tourist attraction. Not Windsor, the West End or Stratford-on-Avon, but Crawley, birthplace of British barbershop singing. They sang outside their hotel. They sang inside, even much to the surprise of the guests at dinner.
Goodbye, my Coney Island baby. Farewell, my own true.
Were still singing early next morning on their guided tour of Sussex. And by now, even the coach driver was finding them difficult to resist.
You got it singled enough the back of your neck. That's what it's all about. And I can put my arms around this fella and give him a good shake and and sing a song with him. And I only met him 5 minutes ago.
That's right. You can't fight with a guy you're going to sing harmony with. It's that sort of fellowship that we look for in barbershop.
We thought we were royalty coming in. In fact, one fellow even kissed my wife's hand. Don't they do that in Australia?
Have you counted her fingers?
I think she's looked at her rings.
The bloom from my water.
But of course you can't keep them talking for long. They may have only just been introduced, but put them together and within seconds, I'm afraid, they're off again.
Lovely. Very good. It's a pleasure to sing with you. Hands across the ocean. Yeah, that's right.
I don't think I'd ever seen such amazingly cheerful people. If this is utopia, then perhaps we all ought to learn to sing harmony.
So Bruce and the guys came back just buzzing with barbershop excitement, going, how do we get more of this in Australia? And Bruce was, so he put the word out, and in no time at all, 30 blokes were singing, and they put on a show, as we discussed, at Subiaco in 1985. And with 30 men, and it was sold out. They sold out 3 shows for 1,000 people. Oh my gosh, incredible. But they realised that maybe there are other barbershoppers around Australia. Up until then, there was no network for people to connect with each other. So what we now know is In Harmony began in 1st of December 1985 with Bruce Oakley and the boys just going out to everyone, and they contacted I got some funny notes from funny people. They put out information through all sorts of media they could find: TV, radio, print, of course, carrier pigeon and smoke signal, which is typical for barbershoppers. And they started the Barbershop Notes. And people started to come out of the woodwork, like the guys in Queensland and other places in Australia. And after they started Barbershop Notes in 1987 is when they added the AIMS logo to our newsletter. Moving along. And so in 87, so the Western Australian Association of Men Barbershop Singers was amended to AMS in 1986, and that's when the original emblem was made, became infamous, you might say. Now, we love competition, but before there was a competition, people still wanted a competition. And so in the embryonic days of AMS, as people started coming out of the woodwork and big country, coaches started going around and new choruses and quartets formed. But the existing quartets, some of whom were new, but others of whom had been around for a long time, said, let's have a competition. This would be fun. So there was a couple of video competitions over the years before our inaugural in-person competition. And on the left of your screen there, the Barber Tones, they came out first of half a dozen video entries in 1986. And then the Barbershop Boys, they came out on top in 1987. So plenty to celebrate about that. So the Side Street Ramblers, they were the 1983 International Champ Quartet. So as the excitement built after the first few years and people started to come together and realise that there were a lot of barbershoppers around Australia who loved what they were already doing or loved the prospect of discovering it, because we had some contacts, or Bruce and the guys had some contacts in America, they wanted to bring out the big guns. And Brian Beck, who's second from the left, is one of the all-time most legendary barbershoppers. But the 1983 Ramblers were invited out. They came in 87 and did a tour, coaching and performances and mentoring and all sorts of things around Australia, which was massively helpful. So here we are, finally, our first convention. Woo! So the point is, there was a lot of work, a lot of people contacting, money raised, etc., etc. So lots of stuff happening. Q&A. All right. So let's see if I can work this Q&A bizzo. Go up to the top here. Q&A. Tim Warwick, are you really from Australia? Thanks, Tim. It's wonderful of you to be here. Was there any information or other barbershop singing on in Australia before 1985? My father sang in a quartet in the 1930s to help pay his way through Tech College. So Robert Turnbull, great question. So yeah, the answer is yes. As we know from both Andy Aberley's book as well as the TV articles, barbershop quartets in Australia have been around since at least the 1950s. I don't know how much long before that, so this is as good a time as any to say that yeah, if you've got information on the history you're aware of, especially specific documents or paraphernalia, lapel pins, clothing, records, sheet music, any of that, photos, videos, yeah, please send them through to me. My email address is richard@reeve.com.au. So thank you for your question, Roberto. When was the National Council formed? Paul Adams. You're on the National Council, Paul. You should know that. We'll get to that actually soon enough. Bill Gates would like to answer this question live. Looks like he's answered it. Okay, so 1991 on the Gold Coast, they're all very exciting. So the Sentimentals, who Derek Cosburn and Link Abbott, the Dreamworld Quartet, that they took away the gong, and Men in Harmony with Bruce Oakley there proudly in the centre from Perth. They were the inaugural chorus champions. Right, we've got to race along. We've got so much more to get to. So there they are, the Sentimentals, and they won the right to represent AMS at International, which they did the next year. And here's a cute little video of them at this isn't competition, this would be them at one of the social shows at International.
But someday we'll all be together once more, when all of the ships come back to the shore. I realize something I always known. I still call Australia, still call Australia. I still call Australia always my home, always my home.
How beautiful is that? And as anyone knows who's been outside of Australia, it's incredibly emotional singing "Go Away." Incredibly emotional singing about Australia outside of Australia. It really reminds us how much we love Australia. So we've had our first convention. I'm going to just skip through a bunch of things here. In 1992, the regions began. It was acknowledged that some more detailed planning and on-the-ground benefits for that. So the original regions were Sunshine Region, Queensland and Northern New South Wales, Eastern Region, New South Wales, Victoria and Tasmania, and then Western Region. So, and the conventions, so I'll just skip through a bunch of those to get to some other, again, this is not, we don't have time for a thorough history. So after 91 on the Gold Coast, it was Perth in 93. And the Blenders, I want to really take a moment to acknowledge the Blenders. They won in 93 and kept winning until 2007. So 8 consecutive gold medals from the Blenders on the Gold Coast. What an amazing achievement and what an amazing legacy in Australian barbershop from the Blenders. And they were the first chorus to represent AMS, Australia at International in 1999. It's in 95, the convention was held in Canberra, 97 in Sydney, etc. So that's just, this information is found on the BHA website. I'm just giving you a snapshot of what it looks like. You'll see there on your left, the Blenders, dominant for over a decade, and then a new chapter with VE and Sound Connection and the Festies. So that's the chorus competition. Right, so thank you to Nick Ellis for this data. Any of you who are avid readers of In Harmony newsletter, which I know you all are, this is the average scores from the Perth 93 convention through to last year's Hobart convention. And I know there's a lot of lines and a lot of information on the screen. There's just one thing I would draw your attention to. If there are other things you notice, that's awesome. Send them through if you'd like to. But the one thing is, can you see a general overall helicopter view trend there? And I would suggest that over the past 20 years or so, generally speaking, most choruses in Australia have got better. I think that's the general trend. You look back in the early days and there weren't many, if any, singing in the 70s. Now we've got a whole bunch singing in the 70s. So that augurs well for the education we've done. The other side of the coin, however, is this is, again, thank you to Nick Ellis, present MD of the River City Clippers. This is information about the chorus size. So each of these vertical bars is a year's convention, and all of the dots are how many on the vertical axis there. You can see 20, 40, 60, 80. That's how many men on stage they had. So you can see for sort of the first half to 2/3, we had actually quite a few choruses up above the 40, towards the 60, and even a couple around that 80 mark. But look, in the last few years, the data tells a story. So anyway, there we have the general overall trend of chorus size in Australia. There's really no one from Adelaide and Hobart much over sort of the mid-30s. Just interesting, it is what it is. The quartets, so we've had a quartet competition for the past 30 years, and here are a bunch of the quartet winners, with the collective being the most recent in 2019. That going all the way back to 1991. Again, that's all to be found on the BHA website. Thanks to Adrian Gimple for putting this together, but we play it each year at convention. It's just a beautiful 3 minutes of all of our champs.
I wonder what has happened to that old quartet of mine. I hope and pray we'll meet again somewhere, someday, sometime, if only to remind them how dear they are to me, and just how much I miss the touch of four-part harmony. I wonder if they still recall the tears that filled our eyes the night the crowd applauded when we won our first big prize. All that I possess I would forsake if just once more I could partake, singing one more song, just one more time, with that old quartet of mine. And if someday we ever meet again, I will smile and stand in line just to sing one song. Just one more time, with that old quartet of mine.
So from 1992 onwards, we've had quartets representing Australia at international, very proudly so. And I've just highlighted our most successful international competitor. Not only has Blindside come 22nd, I think, is their highest, almost mic testing for the semi-finals, but also third place in the collegiate. Medaling in any international event is awesome. So Blindside, we are very proud of you. I've been a fan of yours ever since I discovered you. Keep up the good work.
1, 2 now, a 9-foot grand and a 10-piece band and a 12-girl chorus line. Well, Diablo Motors had a heck of a sale downtown yesterday. But word got round, no money down, takes years and years to pay. When I got there, the lot was bare, but the salesman said, hold on, for a little cash, I got a 2-ton dash behind the barn. If the devil danced in empty pockets, he'd have a ball in mind. With a 9-foot grand and a 10-piece band and a 12-girl chorus line. Well, I'd raise some loot in a 3-piece suit, give him one dance for a dime. You know, if the devil danced in empty pockets, he'd have a ball in mind. Every time, well, he said, Fred, it ain't the end. Let's see what we can do. If you own a home, I've got a loan tailor-made for you. Then above the racket, a voice in my jacket said, Doc, I am told to know. The devil made me do it, he talked me into it, that was all she wrote. The devil danced in empty pockets, he'd have a ball in mine with a 9-foot grand, 10-piece band and a 12-girl chorus line. Race some loot in a 3-piece suit, give him 1 dance for a dime. The devil danced in empty pockets, he'd have a ball in mine. Now they say that there is a bottomless pit where the devil likes to play, and I'd sell my soul to get out of this hole and then be held at pay. If the devil danced in empty pockets, down the ball in mine with a 9-foot grand, a 10-piece band and a 12-girl chorus, la-da-da-nine. The devil danced in pockets in mine.
Australia's Got Talent in around about 2010, 2011 was pretty massive around Australia, and a bunch of barbershoppers took part in that. You got Free Fall, our 2003 champs take part. Benchmark, you've got the Fishies there looking all young, or even younger than they are now. VAing on the top and the Blenders, just some of them who took part. But I can't let go without really acknowledging Benchmark. They just made a massive impact.
Come on here, come on here, come on and here, come here, that ragtime band. Going to look neat, coming down the street, the best band in the
That's got to be a penny dropper down at the old ladies' home, fellas. That is so fantastic to listen to. You had a little bit of humour in there. One of the best I've ever seen. I totally loved it.
I would actually even go one better than Kyle and say that is the best barbershop quartet I've ever seen. Every single person's part was pitch perfect. The timing was perfect. You guys are amazing.
Again, we can watch the whole thing. That's on YouTube, obviously, but we have to keep going now. But yeah, congratulations to Benchmark on massively representing barbershop on Australia's Got Talent. Okay, moving right along. Additional quartet categories were added: seniors 95, youth 99, mixed 2015. Massive topic of its own. We could spend half an hour talking about this. But over the years, from the mid-90s on, mid-80s onwards, visiting Barbershop Harmony Society quartets have been a massive part of BHA. So many of our favourite quartets, the list there, which even that's not complete. But one of the things we love about our convention is having a quartet there. So, and the Ritz in '91 were in fact, they were there as judges and announced their results. So there's actually some footage of that, which I shall share with you another time, which is pretty cool. Just the Ritz saying, and your first ever national champion. It's pretty cool. And John Little welcoming everyone as well. But we've got to massively go on. Can't go on without mentioning John Newell. He was singing Barbershop before the society was formed. So he's singing Close Shave in Tassie. I will point out there's a gold medal moments from featuring John, and there's also from a podcast from overseas. There's also an awesome Australian podcast called Good Morning BHA. Ash Schofield and another member of TLA, I think it might be Trevor Anderson or Adrian or someone, is on with him. So check out Good Morning BHA as a podcast, some great stuff there. And John Newell is a guest on that. So lots of great information there. So he was also a member of Southern Cross, 2-time national champion. And just a very quick note, BHA or AMS took on BHS's rule that the champ had to retire. So all through the 90s, our champs retired, but we then realized that we're in a different boat to BHS. So from 99 onwards, champs could sit out a year, but then come back. And so that's Southern Cross was the first quartet to come back and win again. And they went over and represented Australia as well at international. But then John moved over and won international, which is just insane. Top left there is a book John wrote, so check that out as well. Just search for John's book or contact him, and he'll be happy to give you one. I highly recommend it. Very quickly play you some of this. I've really got to scoot through here. This is a bit of fun.
You're the one thing in my life I'm thinking of. May I never see the sun go down. May I never feel the falling rain. Love that I declare isn't all that's right and fair. May I never love again.
So I highly recommend all the 3 YouTube sets, quarterfinal, semi-final, final, are all just on YouTube. So just search for those, and they're all just amazing.
Babe, here's what's on my mind. Let's you and me unwind. So pack your bag and let's leave it all behind.
Musical Island Boys, not Aussies, but they're our cousins, and they won international in 2014. They've been over here so much to coach and mentor, and they're good friends of ours. So from school quartet to winning collegiate to international, just an extraordinary achievement. So I wanted to give them a shout out as our cousins. So we're very proud of them. Look at this, eh? Look at Danny, second from the right there, El Presidente. So this is Ford at the Bar, a 95 silver medalist and the 97 champs. Harry Owen on the right there, and Nick Begbie in second from the left, and he went on to be the main leader of Idea of North, one of Australia's most popular a cappella groups.
I'd really like to dedicate this to my 4-month-old son, but it's about a girl. However, this is one of Stevie Wonder's classics called Isn't She Lovely?
Good on Nick for having such amazing success. Judging from 91, we brought BHS judges out, but one of the initiatives that Council implemented, took the first steps in the mid to late 90s, was to build up judges in Australia. And they acknowledged at the time that was going to be a bit of a long haul, but now we've got a really robust judging system in Australia where every 3 years, in the past decade or so, it has coincided with PANPACs, where the judges come out a few days early for competition, the BHS judges, and re-qualify all of the judges from the Australasian Guild. So New Zealand and Australia share judges. And that's just a fantastic initiative. Judges school, so yeah, we go away together, we go to all sorts of classes and do practices, and it's a really big investment, but I think Barbershop in Australia has massively benefited from that over the past 20, 25 years. Name change. So of course we were AMS, and then almost a decade ago, the Barbershop Harmony Australia came out, and that was for a range of marketing reasons that we don't have time to talk about now, but yeah, that was a big turning point in BHA. Council has consistently tried to make convention, which is not the only thing we do, but it is the jewel in the crown, make that more attractive. So the John Little Show, named after, of course, our initial first president, the chorus chorale, and making it a festival to try to make it more open to the public. So I think over the time, that's the real balance. Council's tried to keep what's best about it, as well as make changes, make it even better. Life members, this is all information up on the website. Just wanted to bring your attention to it. So John Little, our first president. Bruce Oakley, who I talked about, he went over to America and brought it back and started Men in Harmony and was just such a huge force in the start of AMS. Andy Aberley was also right there from day one, and as was Link Abbott, Mel McMichael in Queensland, Griffo, Ian Mulholland has made a massive contribution, and Mike and Kevin and David, they've all been on National Council and had decades of service. So yeah, I think it's important that we know who they are and always say hi to them at convention and thank them for their service, because we wouldn't be here without them. Derek Cosburn, absolute legend of BHA, wanted to make another contribution. So over the past 3 years, he's sponsored the BHA medal, basically, which is given to someone who makes an exemplary contribution in any number of ways to Barbershop in Australia. And so 3 awesome recipients there. Harmony College began in the 90s, and it's grown to be a huge thing. Again, we could do an hour on this, but a massive opportunity for people to get together with lots of different activities there. Education faculty, this is not for you to read clearly because there's so much on screen, but another initiative over the past number of years to get coaching in a coordinated way out to people. The BHS new strategy. Everyone in Harmony. So in 2017, the Barbershop Harmony Society announced the new strategy to for 80 odd years. It was a men's organisation, and now it is not. The gender is not a requirement. So and Australia, of course, is in the middle. BHA is in the middle of going through our own discussion on that. And of course, there have been lots of BHA Council information about that, which I would point you to. So this podcast. So here it is. Just look, just wherever you get your podcasts, search for Good Morning BHA, and I'm told it's an absolute ripper. So make sure you do that. Let's get on to it. And so cheers.
Thanks, Richard. Always a pleasure to hear from you, and well done on cutting down an entire Harmony Academy course into a 1 hour session. Great job. Folks, keep an eye out on our YouTube channel, as this will be uploaded there in the next few days. All of our previous BHA live sessions are also available there, so please check them out by going to YouTube and searching for Barbershop Harmony Australia. Also, watch out for the registration link for our next sessions. We'll be emailing that out, as well as posting links on our social media channels. Now, before you go, let me give you a really quick update on BHA's membership review and the task of developing a full understanding of the issues that are important to all members. We're now at the stage of this project where we're seeking individual submissions from BHA members and associates. This is all the stuff that you couldn't quite capture in the survey, didn't know where to put it, don't know who to tell. Anything that you think is important to you as a member, send it in to us. That will be used as part of our collection of data for this membership review. So your open submissions need to be forwarded to the VP membership by email to membership@barbershop.org.au by Friday, the 7th of August, 2020, in any form that you wish, by email, a Word document, Pigeon, a link to a shared resource, whatever is easy for you. Go ahead, send us a submission. Your input will decide the future of our association. So there you go, folks. That's all we have for tonight. Once again, a huge thank you to Richard for your session. Thanks to everybody for watching. Please stay safe, have a great weekend, and we'll see you next fortnight. Good night.